These principles of digital audio have a major impact on the size of files that are created as you're working in a DAW. Every time you record audio, everything has to be stored on the hard drive, and you'll find that if you increase bit depth and sample rate, you get much, much larger files. We also want to be conscious of the file types that we're creating. This term compression gets used in a variety of ways throughout audio production, and we want to understand just by context what we're really talking about. We can talk about data compression, which is what we're going to be referring to here, but we can also have audio compression. They're two different things, though people usually won't qualify by saying data or audio. When we talk about data compression, it's kind of like a zip file. You ever notice that you take a Word doc and you zip it, you make a compressed file type, it gets much smaller. We've reduced the data, but we've retained all the information. That's a lossless type of compression. And we can also have things like MP3, which is also a kind of data compression that loses some of the information. You've heard a poor MP3 doesn't sound so good, right? We've lost some of the audio. We want to make sure that when we're working with DAWs and we're recording, we're using the highest possible quality of audio files. It's going to create larger files, but it makes it so that you can manipulate the audio files more, you can use more audio effects, and you're not going to get that ugly MP3 kind of sound. So we have to make sure we're using a lossless type of file. And primarily, when a DAW is recording, it's going to be creating a WAV or AIFF file. And this is the full quality, uncompressed audio. And it's important that you're using one of these file types. As you load up your DAW, there'll be questions, or in the preferences, there'll be options for which file type you're going to use in that project. And you want to make sure it's a WAV or AIFF file. Those are both totally uncompressed. They'll be large, but they're going to be of highest quality. If possible, choose broadcast WAV files. It stores more metadata, which can be useful if the project file does crash. The other parameter you're going to have to adjust when working with your DAW is going to be if it's an interleaved or non-interleaved file. You're used to, in your iTunes library, dealing with interleaved files, which means you have a single file that includes both the left and right audio channel, and you can just play it back in your iTunes library. Some DAWs are set up by default to make deinterleaved files, which actually saves a separate audio file for left and a separate one for right. I would recommend right at the beginning of the process, make sure you're using interleaved files. It's easier to work with, and you'll just find it's more natural when recording with those type of files. So again, when you're setting up your DAW, you want to use an uncompressed file type, which would be AIFF or WAV. I would suggest 24-bit recording, a 48,000 hertz sample rate, and make sure they're interleaved files. I'd like to take a moment to show you where these settings are in a variety of DAWs. Now, there are many digital audio workstations out there, and I can't cover them all, and the new ones are coming out all the time. But the truth is, these settings are the same everywhere. They're in different locations, but no matter what DAW you use, you need to find how to set these settings. So let's check it out in 4 different DAWs. The first is Pro Tools. Right when you start a new Pro Tools project, you're asked to set many of these preferences up. You have audio file type, and you can choose BWF, which is broadcast wave and is what I would suggest recording at. We have options for bit depth. We can choose 24-bit. I can choose my sample rate of 48 kilohertz, and I can choose interleave files here. In the playback engine preferences in Pro Tools, I have options for my buffer size, and I can set it to 128 if I'm going to be doing some recording. I also set in the DAW application which output device I want to use, and I'm choosing one of my interfaces here. We'll see similar settings over in Digital Performer. When I go to the Configure Hardware Driver window in Digital Performer, I have option for the device I want to record with. I can choose sample rate, and I have my buffer size option there. Over in the Preferences, under Audio Files, I can choose Broadcast Wave, Interleaved, 24-bit. If we look at Logic, we're going to see similar things. In the audio preferences, I can choose my in-out device, and I can show my buffer size there. I can also choose 24-bit recording. Over in the general preferences under audio, I can choose recording file type, and we again have broadcast wave as the recording file type. In the project settings, I can choose sample rate. Same stuff everywhere, right? These are the really important preferences. And you're going to see a lot of other preferences in many of these windows, but these ones I'm pointing out are really the most important and the ones you're going to change most often. In Ableton Live, in the audio preferences, we see a similar thing. I can choose input and output device. I have my sample rate. I have my buffer size. And in the recording settings, I can choose my bit depth and file type. So we see that no matter what the application, these settings are the most important ones and are the ones that you need to know how to configure. I'd recommend you pause working in this video here and go to your DAW and find these settings. Again, we're looking for in-out device, audio device, sample rate, bit depth, buffer size, and recording file type.